with the upcoming release of Lightfall, our mods are about to be changed forever. With that knowledge, a lot of our current builds in the game aren't going to perform the way they are right now. So I wanted to start a series leading up to Lightfall where I make a build with every single class and subclass that we currently have in the game. These builds are not going to take advantage of any combat style mods and heavily focus on fragments, exotics, and aspects. Normally, if you use these builds with mods equipped, it is just the cherry on top. And of course, before you start doing anything in Lightfall, you can obviously take a look at the new mod system and try to insert what you think might work. This is just supposed to be a clean slate and give you all an idea of what is some of the strongest stuff in the game right now for each of the classes. If anything changes in the future, I will make an updated video talking about what I think could be better. And like I said, if you're interested in every single class and subclass, be sure to check out the channel and give the series a watch. So in this one, I want to talk about the Arc Warlock, which is arguably one of the best subclasses in the game if it just had a small little tweak. Now with the launch of Arc 3.0, I think we all know that Warlock stealthy got the worst version of it, with Titans and Hunters just being, well, absurdly broken. But it seems that Bungie was aware of that and ended up buffing it quite a lot, and is actually rose to be one of my favorite subclasses in the entire game. It is extremely strong for act clear with ability spam, and it also plays a very heavy support based role as well. I think this is a great starter subclass and is going to perform extremely well in Lightfall, and you're going to have access to deal with every single champion just from the build alone, and no champion mods applied from the artifact. All right, so jump right into it. Our aspects we're going to be taking is Arc Soul and Electrostatic Mind. If you don't know what either of these do, Arc Soul is going to let you place down your rift and give you a Arc Soul that will periodically shoot out and do damage to enemies. When you're amplified, this will become supercharged and shoot a lot faster. And the buffs I was talking about earlier, this is one thing that actually received a very substantial buff. Arc Soul is nothing to be slept on now. It can pretty much one burst almost all lower tier enemies in the game, and it is great for adding additional boss damage if it is a very long boss damage phase. I imagine this during the legendary Lightfall campaign. If you are playing solo, it is going to be a great companion to have by your side. Now on top of that, this also will let your rift recharge faster when you're nearby allies. So this is very good for the support aspect, because not only are you going to be providing your teammates with an Arc Soul, you can also pretty much have infinite healing or empowering for them 24/7 depending on the rifts that you want to run. And now you have Electrostatic Mind, so this is going to let you spawn Ionic Traces when you defeat enemies with arc abilities, Jolt, or Blindness. Also, when you pick up Ionic Traces, they will make you amplified. That is going to be very good synergized with Arc Soul, because you're pretty much going to have a constant amplified Arc Soul 24/7 with this build. Also, if you don't know, Ionic Traces will give you a huge chunk of energy back when you pick them up, and we're going to be playing into that even more with our exotic. So the exotic I'm going to be running is the Fallen Sunstar. This has the exotic perk Ionic Conductor. Ionic Traces you create move faster and grant you additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an Ionic Trace. So this means now every single Ionic Trace you create is just going to be able to track to you a lot faster, which means you can get that ability energy even quicker. But what's also really cool is that when you pick these up, you will also give your teammates ability energy, which again plays into the support based role of this build. Not only are you going to be able to spam rifts for your team, give everybody Arc Souls, you're also going to be feeding them a bunch of ability energy 24/7, because you can spam your abilities pretty much all the time. But now, speaking of abilities, I would highly recommend running a Flashbang Grenade. I know this might sound a little weird, but this is a grenade that will blind targets. It also does have the lowest cooldown, which means you can spam it a lot more, and when Lightfall launches, blinding enemies will actually stun unstoppable champions. So now your grenade has the ability to stun unstoppable champions, which is very, very good. And on top of that, in harder in-game content, if your grenade doesn't kill an enemy, blinding everything is still very, very good, and nothing will just shoot at you. Now I also like to run Chain Lightning, because this will actually apply Jolt when you melee an enemy. This will also chain lightning everywhere. Now you're amplified, this will actually create additional chains, and it also did receive a buff to make it when you're amplified, it will also do a lot more damage. This is a very strong melee. I would highly recommend taking it, because Jolt on its own is very good, and Jolted enemy when Lightfall comes out will stun Overload champions. So now your melee can do Overload, and your grenade can do Unstoppable. I would highly recommend taking Chaos Reach. Even though this super needs to get buffed dramatically, it is still way, way better than Storm Trance. If Chaos Reach did get buffed and gave it a small damage increase, or just some functionality so you could still use your weapons while it's active, this would be one of the best Warlock subclasses in the game, in my opinion. The supers for this subclass are just extremely subpar compared to almost every other super in the entire game, but Chaos Reach did get a cooldown buff, so you do get it a little bit more often. So it is nice if you need to just pop it and kill a higher health target if you're in a sticky situation. Now for fragments, I like to run Spark of Resistance, so while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. This is very good for the survivability of the build. Since you're going to have rifts pretty much 24/7, that is going to be your healing, and then this will just give you a bunch 300 damage reduction, which makes you harder to kill. Now I also like to run Spark of Shock, so your arc grenades will jolt targets. This is going to be very good for a couple different reasons. Not only is jolt just really good for ad clear, but like I said earlier with the melee, jolt will now actually stun overload champions. So this means your flashbang grenade will now stun unstoppable and overload because it will jolt enemies, and it will also blind everything in the area alongside jolting enemies, which makes it extremely good for ad clear. And this is just a very, very strong utility grenade, pairing it with Spark of Shock. Now, I also like to run Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an Onyx Trace. Now, you might think Electrostatic Mine is already doing that, which it is, but these will actually stack together, and Spark of Ions pretty much does it all the time, where Electrostatic Mine does seem to have a small little cooldown on it. So this just means now you're getting more Onyx Traces when you're killing jolted targets, which is, gonna be pretty much everywhere with things like your grenades and even your weapons, which we'll get into in a second. And then finally, Spark of Amplitude, so rapidly defeating targets while you're amplified creates an orb of power. Since we're going to be amplified all the time with Electrostatic Mine, this just means we're always going to be making orbs for our teammates, which again further helps play into the support role, but the orbs will also help you out a little bit too when we get into our mods. Now, I'd highly recommend 100 Resilience and 100 Discipline. 100 Resilience is going to be getting nerfed in Lightfall, but it's still a 30% damage reduction, and pairing that with Spark of Resistance, it's still going to be extremely strong. And 100 Discipline, so you can get your grenade back as fast as possible. As you see, we're already at a 35-second cooldown, and then pairing that with all the Onyx Traces you're going to be getting, you can spam these pretty much everywhere and just have everything blinded on the battlefield, everything jolted. Pretty much every single champion will be stunned by this as well, and it is just very, very strong. Now, weapons, I have an ARB list on right here just because it has intrinsic anti-barrier. This just means you're going to, finish the trifecta of anti-barrier, unstoppable, and overload, so you don't ever have to worry about it. And if you remember, match game is going to be removed from Lightfall, and now you can actually just run whatever you want to, which is very, very good for build crafting. And so that's why I would highly recommend running a bolt shot weapon. This can be the Aquilas SMG, maybe the new trace rifle from this season currently, just anything that has volt shot equipped. I would highly recommend doing that. If you don't know what volt shot does, when you get a kill and reload, it will actually reload pretty much a jolt shot in your gun, and when you shoot the next enemy, it will apply jolt to them. This will also be able to stun overload champions and also heavily play into your subclass to give you those Onyx Traces, which again will make you amplified and give you even more ability energy. So with this setup, you can kind of imagine Volt Shot is an at clear and utility. Alongside it kind of works like Wellspring in a way, because it's making those Onyx Traces that will give you all your ability energy. And then for heavy, we still don't know exactly what's going to be good. It is leaning towards rocket, so I would definitely recommend having a good rocket on you, but obviously we'll just have to wait and see what the heavy meta is going to be, and then you can just swap this out for whatever you want. Now, get into mods that are going to be sticking around. Like I said, we're not going to be focused on combat style mods because since this whole system's getting changed up, but I'm going to be running a Dynamo, so this is going to reduce your super cooldown when you use your class ability in your target. Since we're going to be spamming rifts all the time, this is a no-brainer to take. It's just going to give you some extra super energy, which is nice. You could also take ashes to assets as well, but the problem is with this specific setup, your grenade's not going to be getting a lot of kills. It's definitely more of a utility grenade. Don't get me wrong, it definitely will get some kills, but I think you do get a little bit more benefit out of Dynamo since you're going to be spamming your rifts all the time anyway. But if you want to take ashes to assets, that is a great thing you could take as well. Now, also would take a Harmonic Siphon, so rapid weapon final blows to match my subclass type, was make an Orb of Power. This is going to be really good because you're always going to be running a Volt Shot weapon, which is always arc. That paired alongside Spark of Amplitude means you're pretty much making orbs 24/7 for your team and yourself, which again is going to help out a lot with this build. Now, I also have a Bolstering Detonation, so this is going to grant class ability energy when I cause damage with a grenade. This is just going to help out with that ability spam of the build. Not only your Onyx Traces giving you ability energy, this will now also give you some Rift energy when you do damage with your flashbang. You could slot in another one of these mods, but I highly just recommend taking a reloader for whatever weapon you're using that has Volt Shot, just so you can proc Volt Shot even faster. Now, always remember to put in your resistant mods because these can help out with survivability a ton. With Lightfall, we now know that things like Energy Diffuse and Substrate will actually just be an unlockable perk if they have something like this in the artifact. So running the normal ones is going to definitely be very, very beneficial. So always remember to slot these in. Now, also run a Recuperation and an Innervation. So this is going to let me replenish some health when I pick up an Orb of Power, and this will let me replenish some grenade cooldown when I pick up an Orb of Power. Since I'm going to have two ways to make orbs between Harmonic Siphon and Spark of Amplitude, this means you're always going to have this health come back, which is also very good for the survivability of the build. You have your Healing Rifts and Recuperation pretty much 24/7, and Innervation will just help out so you can get that extra little bit of grenade energy, pair that with your Onyx Traces, which means again you can stun Unstoppables, Overloads, blind everything, and jolt everything on the battlefield. And then finally, I would highly recommend running double bombers, so this is going to reduce your grenade cooldown when you use your class ability. Since you have a Bolstering Detonation that's going to give you class ability energy, it's definitely right to put it on the bomber, so when you use your class ability, you get some grenade energy. You could constantly constantly spam your grenade and rift back and forth all the time, which is giving you arc souls. Again, everything else I just went over for the flashbang grenade. And then you also have your melee to also incorporate to also be able to stun overload champions and kill a bunch of stuff while you're amplified. And that is pretty much the entire setup. Again, as a roundup, this is just a very support based build with ability spam. All you want to do is just throw all your abilities out as fast as possible. You're going to get them back even without combat style mods extremely quick with things like Fallen Sunstar. You're making Onyx Traces, you're making orbs, you're making rifts, you're making arc souls, you're making almost anything that your team would need in any situation, but you're also taking advantage of it for yourself as well. I would highly recommend giving this build a shot because I seriously think this build has the potential to be one of the best subclasses if we just did see a Chaos Reach buff. But that is going through all for the build. Let me know what you all think about it in the comments below. Were you already running Arc 3.0? You're definitely going to try it out now. Is this something you're going to take into the day one legendary Lightfall campaign? I think with the new combat style mods, this has potential to definitely be an S tier subclass. So I would highly recommend trying to get something set up for it right now. And you also have access to deal with every single champion, which is just always super nice. But anyway, if you all want to try this build out or get it ready for Lightfall, I will have a dim link to this in the description below. And if you all enjoy or learn anything new, consider subscribing, drop a like, turn notifications on. Also, if you like join my Discord or follow me on any of my socials, all of that will be linked in the description as well. But just know watching this video is way more than enough, and that every single bit of support from you all is truly appreciated. Thank you all so much for watching this one, and have a great day. Peace.